How do, and welcome back to another homebrew review. The amateur radio has been a bit quiet today. I was just having a nice e-pipe and I thought, why don't I make a YouTube video on the Wild Winter Warmer. So if you remember, this was a Geordie Winter Warmer which seemed to have mixed reviews on YouTube. Some were saying it tasted very thin, some were saying it had quite muted flavours. The malts, the spices were all very muted. So what I decided to do was to brew it very short at 15 litres rather than the 23. And also I thought I'd use my wild yeast, because what I wanted to do is test my wild yeast at Kveik temperatures. I know it brews cleanly or ferments cleanly at lager temperatures. I know it ferments cleanly at room temperatures, but they weren't giving any sort of wild yeast flavours. It was very, very clean. And I want to try and taste some of the yeast. So let's up the temperature and see how it will ferment at 34 degrees, between 34 and 35. And that's what I did. It finished fermenting in about 3.5 days, but it was 4.5 days before I got round to bottling it. And it carved up in about a day and a half, something like that. And then they've been in the garage now for about 3 or 4 days. The bottles are really stiff, so that's a good sign. I kept the bottles at 31 degrees, so that helped with the carbonation so quickly. But let's get one open and we'll see how it tastes. So my wild yeast at 34 degrees. I've already tasted one, I won't lie. There we go. The ABV came out very similar to the McEwan's Champion. It's about 7.3%, but it looks a really nice pint. Look at that. Now on camera that probably looks like a stout. It probably looks very black, but it's not. It's a very, very dark reddish brown colour. Now on YouTube videos, when they brewed it normally at 23 litres, it was like a red, had more of a red colour and very clear. This is opaque and very, very dark, which you would expect. This was 15 litres, so everything's been concentrated, including the colour. A nice finger of head there, frothy white head. I don't know if that'll stick around. I find that with high ABV beers the head retention is not very good. Maybe I should have used a bit of maltodextrin just to give it a bit more protein and give some of that head some of that body it needs. But anyway, let's dive in. Aroma wise, very malty, very, very malty. A little bit maybe a spice. Yeah, a little bit of spice, but it's the first thing that hits you is malt. But there's no alcohol in the aroma, which is good, considering it's 7.3%. Right, I'm going to have a taste. Cheers. Oh, that's nice. One of the good things about this time of year is you don't have to bother fridging them. If I put them out here in the garage at the far end, I have heaters here, you might be able to hear one of them. But at the far end it's chilly. It's like today's about 2 degrees, 3 degrees, so you don't need a fridge. That is really nice. Big malt, really big malt. I also used a kilogram of Munton's medium dry malt as the extra fermentables, and you can really taste that caramelness. It tastes nothing like the other YouTube reviews who brewed it as per instructions. It looks completely different, but it tastes completely different. That has such a rich, malty, luscious sweetness to it. A little bit of spice at the back end as well, because that was one of the complaints, that everything was muted in the original. Well, when you brew it as per instructions. But this is just a flavour bomb. Really rich malts, little bit of spice at the back, and a dryness that comes in right at the end. A little bit of bitterness, not much bitterness, but there's some there. And no yeast. There is no yeast flavour to that at all. I've saved the yeast. I collected it from the bottom of the fermenter. I was half wondering, I was thinking of actually taking it from the top. What they call top cropping. Because it had a really big krausen. This was, as I said, brewed to 15 litres. But when you looked at the bucket during fermentation, you can see on the outside like a shadow. The krausen was up to 20 litres. So, sorry, nicely carved, 3/4 of a teaspoon, which is my preferred amount per bottle. For any style, it just seems to work for any style. But yeah, it was up to 20 litres. That's 5 litres of krausen. Wow. Fortunately, it was a big bucket, so it didn't overflow like my last Kveik ale did. That is a really nice beer. Brewed to 15 litres, a kilogram of Munton spray malt, and of course my wild yeast. But I think it would be exactly the same if you used a normal brewer's yeast, because I can't taste my yeast. That was the whole experiment. Can I get some of those nice yeasty flavours, those esters? And it seems to be, no matter what temperature I brew this at, from, well, 12 degrees if you remember when I did my first experiment. I kept one out here. That was by accident, by the way. And then I also did a saison, and that was indoors. I forgot to take my wild yeast indoors, and because of that it was left out here in chilly weather. But it was the next day I came in and already there was a huge krausen, and I'm thinking, well, it's happy at these temperatures, I'm just going to leave it. So that was brewed at lager temperature, really, about 12 degrees. It was earlier in the year. I think it was about October, was it? October time. So that brewed cleanly at lager temperature. So I tried again, but this time it was brewed at room temperature. Normal ale temperatures, around about 20 degrees, 18 to 20 degrees. Very clean, couldn't taste the yeast. And now at 34 degrees, can't taste it. So this is going to be a good all-round yeast. That's really nice. As a beer, you can feel the alcohol. You can't taste the alcohol, but you can feel the alcohol going down. It's got a nice, rich, medium to full mouth feel. Little bit of spice. and a little bit of dryness and bitterness on the back end, but absolutely no yeast. So, will I be brewing this again? Yes, I might actually, but I think I'd probably brew 19 litres or 20 litres, something like that. 15's a bit extreme, but 19 or 20 litres. From all the other reviews I watched, if you brew at 23, it's a bit thin. So it's definitely one that needs short brewing. This is probably to an extreme, as I said. But yeah, I'd brew that again. Probably 18, 19 degrees. And I've kept my yeast, as I said. So I don't think I'll use the yeast in this again. There's no point. This is an experiment. But it looks like a quite versatile yeast I've got. Now, they say usually with yeasts, well, traditional yeasts, when you sorry, that's the dogs, if you can hear them. When you reuse yeast, you get about 10 brews out of them, so 10 generations. This is now the 5th generation, so I've got 5 more brews out of it, but it's going to be interesting to see if I can get some more, because, well, Kvike yeast, for example, just goes on and on and on and on. The traditional Kvike farmers, they would use a wooden ring. Literally, it was like a ring made out of wood. And the way they keep their yeast is they'll dip it into, I think, the sediment, or they'll dip it into the krausen so it gets covered in yeast, fresh yeast, and then they just hang it up to dry. And then in a few months' time, because they tend to brew, you know, big batches, in a few months' time, when they want to make another batch, they just take the ring and put it into the beer until it starts fermenting, and then they take it out again. And they've done this generation after generation, just the same ring, the same yeast. It just seems to keep going. This, I wonder if this would do the same. We'll have to wait and see. I'll have to do some more beers with it, get it up to that 10 generation mark, see if we can go a bit beyond. Of course, as soon as it starts to taste a little strange, then I know the yeast is becoming stressed and it's probably too old. But hey, I'll just put another jar in my garden, collect some more. But it would be interesting to see how long this lasts. And I think what's going for it, and I think this is why it's got such a wide temperature tolerance, is because wild yeast isn't one strain. There's lots and lots of different strains of yeast in that jar that I have. Some will be better at low temperatures, some will be better at high temperatures. And I'm wondering if that's what's happened, that you put it in 34 degrees, those that are best at 12 degrees just fall right to the bottom. Whereas the opposite's true. When you brew at 12 degrees, whatever yeast fermented this just falls out. I'm wondering if that's what's happened, because a wild yeast is a mixed strain. I don't think there will be just one strain that's responsible for fermentation. But we'll have to wait and see. This is part of all, you know, the experiment, trying to understand this yeast and learn about it. Right, well, that's my review then of the Wild Winter Warmer, based on a Geordie Winter Warmer kit. Really nice beer. I'm going to enjoy that. I got about 24 bottles from it, something like that. So they're all out here conditioning, and I think by Christmas Day that'll be a cracker. Okay, well, thanks for watching. In the next video we're going to be doing the Old Brown, the Flanders Old Brown. Now that is a nice beer, so stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, subscribe and click the bell icon and you'll be told when that Flanders Old Brown goes up on the internet. But for now, that's a really nice beer. I'm going to make one before Christmas, so the Flanders Old Brown will be up probably Thursday or Christmas Eve. But if you don't get to see that, have a very Merry Christmas. Bye bye for now.